The evil of Sauron was not born in the fires of Mount Doom. It was perfected in darkness, on an island of pure horror, where he ruled not as a warlord, but as a god of terror. This was his first kingdom, a throne from which he commanded an evil so personal and so intimate, it makes the global war for the One Ring seem a distant, impersonal conflict. Before he was the Lord of the Rings, he was the master of werewolves, a shape-shifting sorcerer who hunted the very souls of his enemies. This is the story of Sauron in his prime, a physical, present, and infinitely more terrifying being than the disembodied eye that would one day haunt the lands of Mordor. To understand this forgotten chronicle, we must journey back, far back, into the mists of the first age of the sun. The great jewels, the Silmarils, had been stolen, and the High Elves had waged a terrible and hopeless war against the first and greatest of all Dark Lords, Morgoth Bauglir. And at Morgoth's right hand stood his most powerful, most cunning, and most loyal servant. He was not yet known to all as Sauron the Deceiver. In the ancient tongue, he was called Gorthar the Cruel. He was a Maya, one of the primordial spirits who had helped shape the world in its infancy. Once a servant of O'Toole the Smith, he was a master of craft, of order, and of substance. But he had been seduced by Morgoth's vision not of domination, but of utter void. Where Morgoth wished to unmake the universe, Sauron wished to command it, to bend all wills and all matter to his own, to create a perfect, horrifying order from the chaos of a broken world. Morgoth gave him command of the northern pass into the elven realm of Beleriand, a fortress of immense strategic importance. It had once been a place of beauty, Tol-in-Gaurhoth, the Isle of the Pass. There, the great elven king Finrod Felagund, brother of Galadriel, had built a watchtower of elegance and strength, the original Minas Tirith. It was a bastion of light, a guardian against the encroaching shadow from the north. But Sauron came. He descended upon the island not with a simple army of orcs, but with a tide of pure terror, a sorcery of fear and despair so profound that it broke the will of the elven defenders before a single blade was drawn. The elves fled, and Sauron took the tower for his own. He remade it. What was once a beacon of hope became a monument to dread. The island was renamed. It became Tol-in-Gaurhoth, the Isle of Werewolves. From this throne of darkness, Sauron's power grew, and his true nature was given free rein. He was a master of phantoms and dreadful beasts, a necromancer who delighted in the torment of the spirit. His power was not merely in the brute force of orcs, but in the subtle poison of lies, the creeping horror of the unseen, and the shadow of the wolf at the door. For nearly 500 years, he ruled this domain of dread. But how could a single elf lord dare to challenge a being of such cosmic evil on his own throne of power? The answer lies not in strength of arms, but in the unbreakable power of a sacred oath. The story turns on a man named Beren, a mortal, one of the last heroes of a house of men destroyed by Morgoth's armies. He wandered alone in the wilderness until he came upon the hidden elven kingdom of Doriath. And there, he saw her, Lúthien and Huan, daughter of the elven king Thingol, and the Maya Melian. She was the most beautiful of all the children of Ilúvatar, a being of unmatched grace and light. They fell in love, a mortal man and an immortal elf maiden. But King Thingol would not give his daughter's hand to a mere mortal. He set an impossible bride price, a task designed to send Beren to his death. He demanded a Silmaril from the Iron Crown of Morgoth himself, a quest of utter folly, a suicide mission into the heart of hell. Beren, undaunted, accepted the challenge. He knew he could not succeed alone. He journeyed to the hidden fortress city of Nargothrond, seeking the aid of its king, Finrod Felagund, the very elf who had first built, and then lost, the tower on Tol-in-Gaurhoth. Beren presented himself before the throne, and he did not come empty-handed. He carried a ring. It was the Ring of Barahir. Years before, during the catastrophic battle known as the Dagor Bragollach, King Finrod had been cut off and surrounded. He would have been slain. But Beren's father, Barahir, and his bravest men fought through the Orcish hordes and saved the elven king's life. In gratitude, Finrod swore an oath of eternal friendship and aid to Barahir and all his kin, in any need they might have. As a token of this unbreakable vow, he gave Barahir his own ring. Now the son of Barahir had come to call in that debt. Finrod knew what this meant. He foresaw his own death. He knew that to challenge the power of Morgoth for a Silmaril was to invite utter ruin. But an oath is an oath, and the word of a Noldoran king is bound by the very fabric of existence. He could not refuse. He agreed to help Beren, though his heart was heavy with doom. He gathered 10 of his most loyal companions, and using his own arts of shaping and illusion, he disguised the company as orcs, hoping to pass unseen through the hostile lands. Their path led them north, through the treacherous mountain pass of the Irid Wethrin, the shadowy mountains. This path led them directly alongside the valley of the river Sirion, and in the middle of that river, shrouded in its evil mists, stood the dark Isle of Tol-in-Gaurhoth. They could not avoid it. From the highest window of his remade tower, Sauron watched. His senses were not so easily fooled. He was the master of illusion, the lord of lies in this part of the world, and he felt a discord in the passage of this small orc band. Their purpose and their stride felt wrong. A suspicion took root in his cold, ancient mind. He sent a patrol to intercept them, and brought them before his high throne in the dungeons of Minas Tirith. He questioned them, his voice a silken venom, peeling back their layers of pretense. But Finrod was a king of the Noldor, who had seen the light of the two trees in Valinor. His will was strong. He would not yield his secrets easily. Sauron did not simply kill his prisoners. His cruelty was far more refined. He sought to break them, not with steel, but with a weapon far more terrifying. A song. A duel began. Not of swords, but of songs of power. These were not mere melodies, but incantations that wove reality, that drew upon the deepest memories and spiritual energies of the singers. It was a battle of will, a contest to see whose vision of the world was stronger. Finrod began. He sang of the beginning of the world, of the green fields of Valinor, the light of the sacred trees, the journey of the elves across the sea, and the white towers they built in the land of the gods. His song was one of creation, of valiant deeds, and of freedom. But Sauron countered. His voice rose, a dark and powerful harmony that twisted every note of Finrod's hope. He sang of betrayal, of the first kinslaying, where elves slaughtered elves on the shores of the Blessed Realm. He sang of the burning of the ships, of the grinding ice of the Helcarax, and the secret darkness that lay in the hearts of the Noldor. He sang of hidden treasons, of shattered oaths, and the overwhelming, crushing despair of the war against Morgoth. Sauron's song was a venom of truth. He took Finrod's memories and turned them into instruments of torture, revealing the pain and failure that lay beneath the glory. Finrod fought back, his voice rising again to sing of friendship, of loyalty, and the unbreakable vow he had made to Barahir. For a moment, his song of hope held back the tide of darkness. But he was an elf, however mighty. Sauron was a Maya, a being of primordial power. Sauron unleashed the full force of his will. He sang a song of endings, of capture and chains, and the ultimate victory of the great enemy. He overwhelmed Finrod completely. The Elven king's will shattered. The illusion fell away from the entire company, and they stood revealed, 11 elves and 1 mortal man, exposed and helpless before the Lord of the Isle. Sauron smiled, a cold, triumphant victory, but he still did not know their purpose. He cast them into a deep pit, a place of absolute blackness far below the foundations of the tower. He sent a message to them in the dark, a whisper that slithered into their minds. One by one, they would be food for his pets. The first to reveal their mission would be spared. Then, he sent in a werewolf. A great, shadowy beast entered the pit. In the suffocating darkness, one by one, the loyal companions of King Finrod were taken. A scream, a sickening crunch of bone, and then silence. And then the beast would come again. Yet not one of the elves spoke a word. They died, protecting their king, and the quest of the mortal man he had sworn to protect. Finally, only Finrod and Beren remained. As the great wolf came for Beren, the Elven king summoned his last reserve of strength. He threw himself upon the beast, fighting with his bare hands and teeth. He fought with the fury of a doomed king, the desperation of a man of honor keeping his final promise. He killed the werewolf, but he himself was mortally wounded. In the darkness of the pit, Finrod Felagund, king of Nargothrond, brother of Galadriel, fulfilled his oath. He turned to Beren and said, "I go now to my long rest in the timeless halls of Mandos, beyond the circles of the world, and I shall be gone before the rising of the sun. For a long time I shall not see it." He died. The greatest of the Noldoran exiles to die in the war, his life given to save one mortal man. In the suffocating dark, with the screams of his kin echoing in his memory, the greatest of the Noldoran kings faced his final choice. But even as hope died in the pit, a power greater than Sauron's was on the move, drawn by a love that would shake the foundations of the world. Far away, Lúthien learned of Beren's capture in a dream of terror. Her father, King Thingol, desperate to keep her from her doom, had her imprisoned in a magnificent house built high among the boughs of the great beech tree, Hirulorn. But Lúthien's power was great, an echo of the Maya spirit of her mother, Maquilian. She would not be a caged bird. She used her own magic, weaving a cloak from her own enchanted dark hair, a garment of deep shadow that brought sleep to all who looked upon it. She climbed from her prison and fled into the night, a lone maiden against the terrors of a world at war. Her journey brought her to a fateful encounter. She met Huan, the Hound of Valinor. He was no mere beast, but a great hunting dog from the Blessed Realm, given by Orm the Hunter to one of the sons of Feanor. Huan was bound by a unique destiny. It was prophesied that he would only meet his death at the hands of the greatest werewolf that would ever walk the world. He was moved by Lúthien's sorrow and courage, and his loyalty shifted to her. He would be her guide and her champion. Together, the Maiden of Starlight and the Hound of the Gods, they made their way north, to the very gates of Tol-in-Gaurhoth. They arrived at the accursed island. Sauron, in his high tower, heard the baying of the hound, and the faint, pure voice of the maiden singing a song of challenge. He smiled. He believed these fools had delivered themselves to his doorstep. He sought to capture Lúthien, and deliver her as a prize to his own master, Morgoth. So he began to send forth his werewolves from the tower, one by one, to deal with the intruders. Sauron believed he was sending forth his greatest weapon. He had no idea he was sending his monsters to their doom, one by one, against a hound who carried the light of the Blessed Realm in his heart. The Master of Deceit was about to face a power he could not comprehend. Huang's might was absolute. He was a creature from before the fall of the world, and against him, the twisted spirits inhabiting Sauron's wolf form stood no chance. He slew them all, silently, piling their bodies at the foot of the bridge, until the orcs upon the walls were filled with terror. Sauron, watching from his tower, grew grim. This was no ordinary hound. He summoned his greatest servant, the ancient and terrible Draugluin, the sire and ancestor of all werewolves. The battle between Draugluin and Huan was a conflict of legends, the first and foulest of Morgoth's creations against the blessed Hound of the Valar. Their fight shook the bridge, a whirlwind of fang and claw, but in the end, the light of Valinor was stronger than the darkness of Angband. Huan defeated Draugluin. The great beast, mortally wounded and howling in agony, fled back into the tower. He collapsed at Sauron's feet, and with his dying breath he gasped, "Huan is here." Sauron now understood. He knew of Huan, and he knew of the prophecy that foretold his end. And in his supreme arrogance, he saw not a threat but an opportunity. If Huan could only be slain by the greatest wolf to ever live, then Sauron himself would become that wolf. He would fulfill the prophecy and destroy this last, lingering light of Valinor with his own hands. It was a challenge he could not resist. He resolved to take the field himself. He cast aside his fair form, the beautiful guise that he used to deceive the weak. He let his own dark spirit pour forth, unconstrained, and took the shape of a werewolf. But he was a Maya, and the form he took was a nightmare made manifest. He became a beast larger, more powerful, and more filled with malice than any that had ever come before. The stones of the tower trembled as he assumed his new shape. His eyes burned with the cold fire of the void. The Lord of the Isle of Werewolves himself came forth. As he leaped from the gate onto the bridge, his monstrous form blotted out the sky. The very air grew cold, and a horror of the soul fell upon Lúthien. But Huan did not flinch. Sauron, the wolf sorcerer, opened his great jaws, dripping with a black venom, and lunged forward to destroy them both. But as the fangs of the wolf sorcerer snapped shut, Huan, swiftest of all creatures on 4 feet, leaped aside. He dodged the venomous charge and sprang upon Sauron's back, a flash of living light against a mountain of shadow. A terrible battle began upon that ancient bridge, a maelstrom of tooth and claw, a conflict of light and darkness made manifest. Sauron's malice was a tangible force, and his power was that of a fallen god. He was far greater than any beast, and slowly, with crushing strength, he began to overpower the Hound of Valinor. He seized Huan in his mighty jaws, and a cry of pain, the first Huan had ever uttered, echoed across the desolate land. Seeing her champion in peril, Lúthien's fear gave way to a power she had not yet unleashed. She cast her enchanted cloak of shadow before the burning eyes of the wolf. The dark fabric billowed out, and a spell of slumber woven from the magic of her Maya blood fell upon Sauron. His eyes, once pits of fire, grew dim and heavy. The sorcerer's grip slackened for a single, fatal moment. In that instant, Huan wrenched himself free and seized his foe by the throat. Sauron was caught. He could not throw off the hound, nor could he escape the debilitating magic of Lúthien's song, for now she sang a hymn of binding, and her voice stripped him of his power and his will to fight. Lúthien approached the defeated lord. She declared that he would be stripped of his physical form, his spirit sent naked and ashamed back to his master, unless he yielded to her the mastery of the tower. Sauron, trapped, in agony, and facing utter humiliation, submitted. His monstrous wolf form dissolved into a cloud of black vapor. He had fled. The island was hers. Lúthien stood upon the bridge and sang a song of immense power. It was a song of unbinding, of breaking stone and shattering spells. The foundations of the fortress of Tol-in-Gaurhoth groaned and split asunder. The tower crumbled, the walls fell, and the pits were laid open. The prisoners of Sauron were freed, blinking in the sudden light. But Lúthien had eyes for only one. She ran through the ruins, searching the dark pits where the most hopeless were kept. There, in the deepest dungeon, she found Beren. He lay still, overcome by grief and despair for his fallen friend, Finrod Felagund. Thinking him dead, she poured all her love and sorrow into her song, but her voice, a beacon in the darkness, pierced the shadow that held Beren's spirit. He stirred, slowly, as if waking from a long and terrible dream. He opened his eyes. He looked up, past his grief, and saw not the stone roof of a dungeon, but the morning sky, and the face of his beloved. In the ruins of their enemy's greatest fortress, beneath the light of a new day, hope was rekindled. They had faced the shadow of Morgoth's chief servant, and had been victorious. But their quest was far from over. The greatest dangers, and the final Silmaril, still lay ahead, locked in the iron crown of evil itself. The tale of their journey to the very throne of the Dark Lord is a story for another time. To ensure you don't miss the next chapter in this epic saga, subscribe to the _Silmarillion_Chronicles, and join us as we venture deeper into the darkness of the First Age.